Batman Brave and the Bold is an interesting showcase. It's a campy superhero show, but one that's specifically evocative of the Silver Age of comics, being a look back into that style of storytelling, with various visual iconography and sound cues from that era. Granted, it's not exactly as simple as that. For example, in the very first episode of a show, it involves Batman teaming up with Jaime Reyes' Blue Beetle, a fairly recent character who was created literally 2 years before the show came out. And a lot of his visual iconography, highly advanced nanotech alien suit, is more evocative of modern day storytelling. Then on another end, we got Plastic Man and Wadsley Winks, a duo which technically predates that era of comics, though they debatably fit in more. Also things like Justice League International, which was generally after that era, and mostly just seems like an excuse to have a bunch of quirky Justice League characters together. You know what, this is just a general celebration of DC Comics characters in general. And I can respect that. A lot of fun vibes in general. It's kind of interesting with when the show came out. And it would have came out around the same time as The Dark Knight, which solidified Batman being a serious character in pop culture, and led to a bunch of pushback against this more campy version of Batman, which kind of shows things in hindsight and maybe some bad timing, since later on we got something like Lego Batman, which would have came out around the same time as Batman vs Superman, which at that point, a campy version of Batman's more welcome, in contrast to a Batman that's so dark and brooding, it's to a comical degree. So I don't need to act like whether there's an argument whether the show is too campy, since truth be told, there's always room for a campy Batman. If anything, an argument can be made how dark the show gets sometimes. There are plenty of pretty hardcore deaths. Red Tornado, Wannabes, the Doom Patrol, a future version of Bruce and Selina. Show kind of hardcore sometimes. Funny enough, if I'd had an issue of a show, it's weirdly enough that I don't care much for Batman. It's complicated. Sometimes I like the guy, sometimes he annoys me. This version's a pretty solid take. Probably my overall favorite comedic take on Batman. Dude in a goofy world, but plays it straight. I also like Just Stop's observation, this technically an older Batman. In a world where we usually start off Batman in his younger years, meanwhile this Batman's actually that peak example of a Batman who's so experienced, he has a contingency for everything. And Diedrich Bader's performance really adds to that. He also basically plays this same sort of Batman into Harley Quinn show, with first season basically being that same characterization. Then later on they tried more weird stuff with Bruce Wayne having a ton of personal drama. Now for where it's more of an issue with the show, it just feels like there's points where I kind of wish he wasn't there. Like the overall ensemble cast is so much fun that I'm like, do we really need Batman? Here's a fun Flash episode, and also Batman. Here's a Hal Jordan Green Lantern episode, and also Batman. Plastic Man and the Freedom Fighters. Batman likes the Patriots, don't you know? Thing is, I don't know if it could be an issue that could barely be avoided, since the show is marketed as a Batman show, and he's kind of expected to be in every episode, so to each your own. There are plenty of good Batman-centric stories, like Chill of the Night, which deals with Bruce confronting his parents' murderer. It goes pretty hard on the dark elements, but it's also accompanied by supernatural elements, which makes this feel like a more heightened story, with the Phantom Stranger and the Spectre acting like an angel and devil on Batman's shoulder in this ordeal. Cool stuff. This also might be one of the more comic-accurate shows, weirdly enough. It's covered pretty in-depth in Casually Comics videos, but certain stories and scenes are basically line for line, and it's kind of nuts the level of dedication. It feels kind of weird to wrap up a Batman Elseworld with it just being Alfred writing fanfiction, but it turns out that's exactly what it was in the comic. So major kudos there. There's a lot more I could go into episode by episode. It's kind of weird how basically every youngish character is kind of a jerk. Like Robin, Aqualad, Kid Flash, the Outsiders, they're all kind of brutish and defiant of authority. Just kind of wild imagining this next to Young Justice, which would have been more respectful of the kids. Also the Outsiders being teens. That's just kind of odd, like, okay then. Between this and Young Justice, it's weird that the closest adaptation to actually representing the Outsiders is probably Beware the Batman. There are a lot of character takes that I like. The bombastic nature of Aquaman, Green Arrow's friendly rivalry with Batman, Plastic Man's kind of fun, and Tom Kenny feels like perfect casting for that. Someone like Captain Adam's done pretty dirty in the show. It's kind of wild that this show was my introduction for a lot of things. Like, it's because of the show I became aware of the Doom Patrol before the X-Men. And weirdly enough, my first introduction to Harley Quinn. Interesting getup compared to what she normally wears. Anyway, overall an interesting take on the DC universe. It's interesting ranking with other Batman shows. Like, accounting it's a greater universe show, it's kind of hard to compare. I might generally prefer to all the others because it has more stuff I want. Probably more easier to compare with something like Justice League Unlimited, you know. Also, I like the Scooby-Doo crossover. I think it was a good way for the show to return for a bit. Like, yeah, just do some Scooby-Doo shit. Anyway, there have been comedic adaptations before and since then, but none quite like The Brave and the Bold. Been a fun ride. Anyway, what's some stuff you like from the show? Feel free to let me know, and cheers.